welcome to another podcast of What the Privacy. I think it's episode 9, and this is the only chap I know that every time I see him, he gets younger. He's either good with his moisturizer, or he's got a picture of himself in the attic. So I'd just like to welcome David Derigiotis, who is working for Flow Specialty, president of the world, I think, isn't that right? President of the world, president of Brokerage, Cyber and Privacy Risk. I've only known David for a couple of years. We've been interacting and swapping stories, and I watch him a lot on TV. He's on the media all the time. He's rather the archetypal smooth American presenter. Hi, David.
Andrew, it's so good to be with you as always. Thank you for having me.
So have you had a good week this week?
I did. It's been very productive, very busy. I just got back from California visiting our Mountain View office. We have 2 offices with the company. One's in Tel Aviv, Israel. The other's in Mountain View, California. And 2 of our co-founders are housed out of our Mountain View. But we had all 3 co-founders there this past week. So it was just an amazing trip to be able to spend with the team, do some strategy planning, meet with clients. We did it all.
Mountain View, that sounds rather sumptuous.
Well, it's in the backyard of where Google and Meta, a lot of big tech companies are out there.
You just joined Flow Specialty.
Pretty amazing organization, pretty amazing people that are a part of this company, which is really what drew me in the first place. The company was founded in 2021, and they've raised $20.6 million through their seed and Series A year to date. And really, I think of it as a next generation wholesale broker, or wholesale broking 2.0. There are some very fascinating things that are being done with artificial intelligence here. And I understand a lot of companies talk about AI almost to the point of it being ad nauseum. If you have a chat bot on a website, some people call it AI. That is not what we're doing. We are legitimately using it to really supercharge and super power all of the brokers that work here, which has huge benefits to the clients that we work with. That has huge benefits to the carriers that we work with and partner with. I think of the tools that are being built here as, think of like Iron Man. You have Jarvis in the helmet talking to Iron Man, guiding him throughout the process. Think about what it's like to just try running, but when you're able to add a bicycle to a human, or you're able to add a Ferrari to a human, the level of enhancement that takes place. That's what we're doing with artificial intelligence. It's keeping people at the forefront, keeping people at the center of everything that we're doing, just giving them better, stronger, faster tools to do their jobs.
Is that why you call it, is it wholesale 2.0?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the way that we're using tech. It's being so much more efficient, being able to give the level of time, attention, and detail to all business. Brokers have the time and attention on accounts that are $100,000, $200,000, $500,000. But what about the accounts that are $1,000, $5,000? Those clients deserve the same level of treatment. And that's where the AI is coming in for us. We've trained our model specifically on insurance-related data. Our experts have guided the process. The model eats up insurance policy forms, it eats up marketing brochures, and it also eats up real-time communication that takes place between the underwriters and brokers. Because a lot of the conversations have to do with appetite. It has to do with pricing or coverage on a particular account. And our model studies all of those things. And for example, when an account comes in and we're looking to place, let's say it's cyber liability, and it's for a large manufacturer, all of the marketing information, all of the correspondence that have taken place from prior conversations, those help guide the placement process. So the system doesn't do it for us, but it will help provide information and guidance. So it will say, hey, we know we have access to 10 different or 15 different cyber insurance markets, but we know that these 5 are probably going to be the best fit for this particular risk based on past interactions, based on what we know about the appetite, based on the coverage that's needed for this particular risk. So it helps guide. It's taking the mind of the broker and putting it into the platform. And then the same thing, Andrew, when we're going back to our clients, and let's say we have one proposal or 3 different proposals that we want to present because 3 carriers have quoted, a full analysis is being done of that insurance quote. It's not just, hey, here's the attached quote. It's no, let's really analyze what's being offered here, because a lot of the retail clients that we work with, they're not experts in cyber insurance. And when they're going back to their client, they're definitely not experts in cyber risk. So information has to be passed. The right information has to be passed along to guide the process. So we're able to point out on every single account the highlights, what's important, some key exclusions that could be problematic. And when we do multiple quotes, it's providing an analysis of all the options that we're giving. That's the difference.
I was going to say, how do you don't want to overload your clients with too much information and confuse them with so much data. You're actually aggregating the data, manipulating the data in order to fit what you view that they should have. And and I do laugh when you say AI. I do laugh because when I just been to a show, I went to a DTX show in Manchester, really good show actually, really good. But the number of stands that had AI on it, the magic dust. But yeah, that's interesting. That is. The thing is, I'm still learning about the insurance market. It's such a complex thing. Mm-hmm. I've done a few presentations to underwriters or spoken to people within the insurance industry. I'm still learning. I still think historically, you've got a lot of people out there that still want to sell house insurance, and cyber insurance is just a different beast. It's going to evolve, isn't it?
It is, and it's very complicated. That's the problem. That all the different carriers that write it, they all call it something different. So there's no standardization, and you have exclusions that are built in. You have different limits and sublimits that are being provided. There's no easy path through. But there again, that's the value of the insurance broker. The broker needs to know exactly what carrier to go to or carriers. They need to be able to provide that information back in an easy to understand, digestible format that can be explained to somebody who doesn't specialize in this business.
So can I ask you a question? Is the key educating the broker? So if you've got the right products and the right messaging and the tool set that can come up with the right answer, that's all good. But if you can't educate the broker, you can't really sell it.
That's exactly it. How in the world is the retail client supposed to go back to the buyer, to the manufacturer, to the public entity, whomever it is that they're working with or working for? How are they able to overcome very simple objections or to explain why this coverage matters or why this sublimit matters or why this exclusion could be problematic? If they're not armed with that information, then they're not going to be able to have the right conversation, and they're not going to be doing their true due diligence or doing the work that they are being dependent on by their client.
Do you use that Jarvis analogy? Because I had to check out who Jarvis was, and his Hulkbuster armor analogy with your customers.
Well, yeah, I think being able to explain it in a more of a manner that people can understand, and maybe the bicycle is a better analogy. And just think of, how fast can you run? How fast can you sprint versus being provided with a bicycle? How much more efficient in terms of the energy output, the speed, the ground that you're going to be able to cover. That's what the AI is doing for us. It's 10xing our productivity. It's giving us access to very deep and rich information that we can then provide back to our clients that we work with that can be further relayed down the stream.
Well, I'm just going to screw your analogy there because Lance Armstrong, that famous Tour de France winner, he wrote a book saying it's not about the bike. So that's a bad analogy. It's about the drugs he took. So anyway, hey, that's a good segue. It's a good segue. Dickie Bird told me that you're publishing a book.
I am.
Tell us about that.
I'm publishing my second book. It's been 5 years since the first one that I wrote, Parental Advisory. This one is called Building the Human Firewall, the ultimate guide to personal cybersecurity. So much has changed, like anything cybersecurity and privacy related. So much has changed over the last 5 years. We have AI threats, we have deep fakes, we have the rise of Stealer logs, and you do a wonderful job, by the way, of capturing Stealer log data. And I think it's so important. Again, it comes back to people. I want to make sure that people understand the threats that are out there, especially as it relates to younger users, younger tech users. You have children, minors that are gaming online. So I have a completely revamped book that speaks to the online threats. It speaks to the evolution of cybersecurity, AI, and what we can all do to better protect ourselves.
When's it coming out?
It will be out on Wednesday, May 29th.
Oh, it means I'll have to buy it, doesn't it?
I'll give you a free copy, Andrew.
No, I'm going to buy it. No, I don't want to do that. Everyone always wants a free copy. The challenge we have, though, this is one of the things that I always look at, these fantastic companies around the world that talk about education, the people, process, technology challenges we have in cybersecurity. The challenge is that we all talk about the importance of education. It's actually getting the people who do the education to actually teach the kids and so on. And as you know, the value of different data. So health data is the most valuable to a cyber criminal. Education data is great because the hacker can hide longer, create these personas. And when the kid suddenly gets a bank account, he suddenly realizes he's got a bad credit rating. How do you get the schools to take this on? And that's the challenge.
It is such a challenge. And I think you have to find a way to make learning a little bit more exciting. You have to make it more relatable. It's, giving a lecture where you're talking and just speaking with a bunch of jargon, it's very difficult. I try to meet people, at least my personal style, I try to meet people where they are and to make it relatable and to have interactions. I always love doing that in my presentations. There's a slide I love putting up when talking about AI. I use a few images that I'll generate that are AI generated, and then I'll have an actual person. Are we
playing AI bingo?
Right, that's essentially what it is. I love to have people. It's like, take a look at these images on the screen. Can you, out of the 4 that are there, can you tell which one is the real person? And then I slowly dissolve the pictures. Yeah, I love doing. It's something that I think it's more interactive. It's fun, and you can see the incredible quality of what these fake images look like. It's amazing.
I saw you on one of the many TV outlets that you keep appearing on. So, Thomas, if you appear on too many TV outlets, I'll get bored of you. So you've got to limit your quality, Dave.
Overexposed.
Yeah. No, I saw it, and I saw you mimic the guy's name, and he put the image up there. That was pretty powerful. And all you took was some key words from him. From his conversation. That's pretty frightening. I mean, just before the call, we were just talking about the elections. So if you're going to talk about fake messaging with the elections going on, this is going to play a prominent part on social media, fake stories. It's quite shocking. And I don't think the Metas of this world and Instias are geared up onto stopping these messages.
I agree. That's going to be a real problem leading into all of these elections, all over the world, not just here in the United States. And the problem is there are 2 different things. You can certainly talk about voter integrity, and you can talk about security around the ability for people to cast votes and for the machines to not be compromised and altered. Then as you mentioned, Andrew, there's the other side of it where content creation is being put out there, and think all it takes for one fake video to go viral. There's no unseeing when millions of people see a candidate making a statement or doing something that they never truly did. That burns, images and impressions in people's minds. And even if you realize that it's fake, it's very difficult to pull that back.
So let's put that into context. So I did a post on our Breachware account. And it was a post. I was looking at some guy had written about the Indian nation having an election this year, and I thought, I wonder how many elections are going to happen this year, let alone in 2024. If you go into Wikipedia, I use Wikipedia. I just listed the big countries in the post. The elections alone this year are going to cover 2 billion people. So that's going to be India, the US, Bangladesh, Brazil, Indonesia, Pakistan, Russia. We've already had Russia, and Mexico. Let alone little old England. Sorry, little old UK. Do apologise to the other countries. So that's half the world's population. So if you can just influence a bit through a fake AI-driven message, that's massive, isn't it?
It's a war for the minds of people. It's a war for your attention. And if you win that, those that are able to win that war are going to have an incredible influence. They will have an incredible influence in persuading. It's like any type of social engineering. Your goal is to instigate some type of action. It's to instigate some type of fear that will propel you to take immediate action without critically thinking. And I think that's hard, where all of us are and myself included, I'm certainly not exempt from this. You get in this kind of mindless scrolling where you're just going through feeds, you're going through content, whether it's LinkedIn or if it's Instagram or if it's X, whatever it may be. You're just bombarded with so much information. And I think it's so important to just take a moment and pause and critically think about what you're seeing. But I mean, you're exactly right. It's a war for your attention and for your mind. And when you have these incredible social media platforms that have hundreds of millions of users, you can touch a lot of eyeballs very quickly.
I mean, talk about social engineering. We got such an incompetent UK Electoral Commission over here. They couldn't even pass their basic cyber essentials tests. The Russians got in and they accessed 44 million registered voters in the UK. So as I said earlier on, it's UK starting off from a minus 44 million voters position. So, I mean, it'd be interesting how we are influenced. And we tend to criticize other countries. It's a disaster at the moment over here at the moment. 44 million registered exposed.
It's incredible. And well, you're certainly not alone in that. I mean, when you think of the hundreds of millions of people that have been compromised over on this side of the pond as well, there has been data breach after data breach. Consistently, organizations fail to do it's the basic blocking and tackling. It's not even these very sophisticated zero-day high-level attacks. Failing to patch, failing to reset credentials. You have people that are using the same email address and password across a broad range of online accounts, and that's all it takes.
I was given a task by my better half to at the show this week. You laugh at this. I'm going to name the company as well. And she said to me, "Can I get me one of those light bottles? Because her old bottle was breaking. So for a water, it's fine." So I went up to this lovely lime green stand, talking about vulnerabilities, and I said, "I'm here just to get a bottle. I do apologise. I'm straight up." Yeah. And I suddenly realised it was Progress and who look after Move It, the file transfer company.
Wow.
So, and I really did feel sorry for the sales staff there, having a complete plonker like me going on the stand. You know what I'm going to say? The biggest zero-day vulnerability ever, and it's still going on.
It is. Over 1,000 companies have been compromised, and I was speaking to a long time.
1,700 it is.
Closer to two. Yeah, we'll say exactly. And this just feeds into what I'm about to say. I was talking to a longtime colleague of mine with a cyber insurance company, and they write a whole bunch of different lines of insurance, but they've been a leading writer in cyber insurance. And he told me recently that they've just had a string of claims come in that were all tied to that, well over 100. And this is just recently. Now, they don't know the full magnitude of what it's going to look like, what the actual cost will be. But here's where you talk about a systemic risk, and here's where you talk about supply chain vulnerabilities, where it just ripples through many different organizations.
That's got to be one of the biggest ones. I mean, the staff were great. The sales team were great. Better than the other company where they had 6 salesmen on the stand, and I stood there waiting for someone to come up and talk to me, and none of them did.
Terrible.
So all looking at their mobile phones. But it's a great show. I have to say that. But you going back to the different levels of exploitation, vulnerabilities, and stolen credentials, the Verizon report came out, and I noted six areas. It was the exploiting zero-day known bugs, stolen credentials, ransomware is up by 1/3, the human element, about 2/3 of breaches are traced to attackers targeting humans. Human error was 28% of breaches. Human error, 28%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And third parties, 15% of breaches involved in a third party or supply chain, including vulnerabilities in shared infrastructure or widely used software. And Sophos have just coming out with their ransomware report for this year. So this data is pretty powerful. I do appreciate the big companies inputting or investing in this research and giving it back to the market. But you're trying to look for the positives. I think there are positives there. We're seeing a lot more positives. I spoke to a lot more companies who are actually agreeing about, this data is a threat now, rather than just ignoring it. they're saying it's a threat. We want you involved.
Well,
Whereas last year it's slightly different.
yeah,
You know,
the good news is this is easily solvable. And you don't always
yeah,
have to have a massive cybersecurity budget, and even the expertise. The expertise can't just rely within the cybersecurity team. Like you talked about the human element of this. People all make up companies. It's people. So you have to be able to arm them with the right information so that they can understand how they're being targeted and exploited, so that they can block that. You can be that shield for not only yourself but for the organization. But again, that you talked about the credentials. What was the stat over the past 10 years? The use of stolen credentials, it appeared in nearly 1/3 of all data breaches. It makes me think back to like the Colonial Pipeline attack that took place, or it makes me think even some of the recent CEOs that have been in the news not putting in multi-factor
yeah.
authentication in place. So it's
We're talking about we're talking about
these
change
aren't.
healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly it. So, and that had a massive ripple effect, huge business interruption losses on healthcare entities all over the United States. Pharmacies suffered greatly. People suffered not being able to fill prescriptions. So it caused a real problem. And you think about how easy it is to just use a unique password for every single online account that you have. And I'm not going to put all the responsibility on the people. The organizations need to provide the training, and they need to tell the consequences of what may happen if you're not taking these proper steps.
And that the payment to the Change Healthcare of $22 million, that was post the counter ransomware initiative on October 31st.
That's right.
Where a US-led group of 50 countries signed an agreement not to pay ransomware.
That's right.
So that kind of flies in the face. I think when there's reality, do I pay the ransomware or don't I? Well, is it business impacting? It's okay for politicians to say that, but in reality, you've got to make a judgment call. But considering though it's coming down, 29% of organizations paid a ransomware in the last quarter of 2023 to get their data back. And the average, I know this from a fact, the average percentage of data you only get back, you only get 60% of your data.
Unreal.
So but they do say that the percentage of people paying ransomware has gone down by in Q4 46%. So
yeah. Well, I think there's more awareness around it, and just like Change Healthcare, a $22 million payment. What did it get them? Did it allow secrecy to take place? Did it prevent it from hitting the headlines? Did it prevent it from cascading down to all the different organizations that they work with and serve? No, it didn't. So they paid $22 million and still got hammered in the media. They still suffered significant business interruption losses. They're still going to have to pay out all sorts of litigation and defense costs regarding this. Their cyber insurance certainly is going to go up if it's something that they even purchased. Has consequences.
So one of the key we've been going for, what's that? We've been going for half an hour now, haven't we? One of the key things that I always ask people who I talk to, and I had a great lunch with a great guy yesterday called Robert Baxter, who's been involved in fraud before the dot-com bubble. He's as old as I am. Sorry, Robert. We were talking about fraud, so he's got an understanding of fraud from the traditional perspective to the cyberverse perspective. What is the tipping point from an insurance perspective or a commercial perspective on when things have got to change?
That's a very interesting question. I think things had to change in 2020. And that's when we had really our first hard cyber insurance market. Cyber insurance really kicked off, I would say, close to the dot-com era, somewhere around 99, 2000 is when true cyber insurance started becoming somewhat of a thing. And adoption was not strong in those days. It was very small. And we're still, quite frankly, here we are 24 years later. It's still a very underserved area. And that's why it's attractive to a lot of insurers overall. I would say a very small percentage of companies worldwide still purchase cyber liability insurance. But we had that tipping point in 2020. Ransomware completely obliterated any type of profitability that carriers were trying to hold on to.
Yeah.
You can't pay out more in claims and losses than you do in charging for the actual product. So we saw a reckoning, and it was very brief in terms of the time that it lasted. There were a couple years that went by where insurance carriers dramatically, sometimes triple digits, increased their pricing. They really pulled back on coverage, and they pretty systematically changed the way that they underwrote risks. So there was no longer just asking for a couple of pieces of information. Now they were requiring organizations to have broad use of MFA in place. And some carriers would go past that. It's like, no, you need to have third parties and vendors and independent contractors and privileged users as well using MFA in place. You can't just blanketly say, broad blanket state that you use it. They're requiring multiple forms of data backups. They're requiring RDP ports to be closed off and make sure that the organization has their arms around any type of remote access that's taking place. So we saw a dramatic change in the underwriting and in the pricing, and it leveled out. But now we're kind of moving back into we're in, I should say, now for last year and a half, more of a softer market where more carriers come back into the marketplace. They start to ease up a little bit in terms of the underwriting. But here, I will say a big difference now is that we're seeing more combinations of actual cybersecurity services being provided with the insurance. And I think this is quite a bit of a change. It's a paradigm shift, because you don't have to necessarily ask all of those questions if you understand from the inside what's taking place, and you're helping to control and manage that for the insured. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more security related services being provided, tied in with the insurance.
Do you think that the law enforcement agency successes of this year with lockbits and breach forums, stupid question time this is, do you think that will reduce the charges that you put against? No, you don't. I'm shaking his head there. Shaking his head.
I don't. These. I mean, Andrew, these different ransomware.
I told you it's a stupid question.
Well, they get shut down and they pop right back up under a new brand. They scatter. It's like cockroaches. You look back at some of these groups that have been around. You hear previous names like, was it Dark Matter? You have CLOP and Conti. They all at some point rebrand, and their key members scatter, and they start up their own new ransomware operator, and they'll have a new PR page on the dark web. It's like whack-a-mole. You hit it, and it just pops up somewhere else.
Yeah, I look at DB Digest, and I see all the new ransomware groups popped up after Lockbit. There was so many new ransomware groups, and with Lockbit, you had so many affiliates. So I don't think they couldn't even chop off the head of the snake because he was stuck in Russia. The good news about breach forums, one of my biggest bugbears on people reporting on breaches, is that they have a credit system. So if you contribute to some intel or reconfigure some data or pass some data for them, you'll get a credit, and that credit can go towards buying data, which again, that's purchasing data. That's so right. I'm mega pleased breach forums came down, but as one of our researchers said, that I think that's only going to come back. US DOD said they're going to bring it back.
I'm not surprised by that. I'm not, and I think you guys do a wonderful job of that, because I know that you never, with all of the data collection and assistance that you provide organizations, I know that you never buy data.
But you can't. Yeah. It goes against it. And I was talking to some guy like last year. If you buy data, and let's APTs only represent 5% of the actual threat. So we're talking about Korea, Iran, and so on. But if you buy data, you almost believe that I'm going to exaggerate this. But if you buy data, I'm only contributing to the North Korean nuclear war fund. Yeah,
right. Well, it's fundraising.
I could be.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It. My $10 to $20 for that data is going to go straight to there. But don't forget, 95% of the actual breaches that occur are financially driven by separate commercial groups.
Oh yeah.
But but that's just an exaggeration. But if you think like that, and if you can't demonstrate it, but hey ho, see if it's where you do business,
right? I know. Well, that's why I like it's. You're certainly above board. You're collecting publicly available information, and there is. the amount of data that you're able to capture from these different compromises, these leaks that take place. It's unbelievable. And I know people think it will never happen to me, but the problem is your data is in there from multiple breaches, and it's just a matter of time. You're like this needle in a haystack. It's a matter of time before somebody makes their way around to you. And then the headache of dealing with financial fraud and identity theft or medical identity theft, which I've seen, it's so heartbreaking. It's brutal.
I have a rule on this podcast not to sell do any sales pitches for breachware. So
I was doing the selling for you, so you didn't have to worry. You didn't do it. It was me.
Hey, so I saw a great post the other day that you put on LinkedIn about your martial arts, your jiu-jitsu. How's that going?
Oh, I love it. It's so much fun. I think there's such value in doing martial arts. Number one, for health benefits, of course, just being physically active. I think jiu-jitsu is probably, in my opinion, the most practical self-defense martial art that you can do. But it's just, you get so much from, whether it's jiu-jitsu or martial arts in general, whether it's the camaraderie that takes place, the discipline, the focus, solving hard problems. Whether you're solving hard problems for work or you're doing it on the mat, it requires a lot of determination.
I'm looking at your picture. You look good in black. Yeah.
Is it slimming? It's slimming.
That's definitely. And also, I used to do martial arts years ago when I was a kid. But when you said discipline and focus, well, I'm like a butterfly. I can't do that. So you're actually fighting. You ain't doing competitive fighting.
No, well, no, it's all training. I haven't done a competition in a long, long time.
When are you going to do one?
That's a good question. I love competing, and I always get the bug to do it. So, certainly doing a mixed martial arts fight is very different than doing a jiu-jitsu competition. You're not getting punched or elbowed or kicked in the face, which is a pretty significant difference. And I'm too old to be doing that now at this point. But I don't know. Maybe I will do a jiu-jitsu competition just to test myself out. I love testing myself.
I'm going to wrap this up. Always like speaking to Dave Derigiotis. Took me about a year to get his name right. Dave Derigiotis. That is right, isn't it? Yeah. So
you're close. You're still close. Derigiotis. You're close.
Oh, well, yes. Thanks again, Dave. And
thank you, Andrew.
See you later. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.